Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. March 25th, Joe Biden criticizes the Georgia election law. 3 months later, the Department of Justice challenges it. September 1st, Joe Biden criticizes the new pro-life law in Texas. 8 days later, the Department of Justice challenges it. September 29th, the political organization asked President Biden to involve the FBI in local school board issues. 5 days later, the Department of Justice does just that. Mr. Attorney General, was it just a coincidence that your memo came 5 days after the National School Boards Association letter went to the president?
So we are concerned about violence and threats of violence across the board against school officials, against...
Is there any connection, Mr. Attorney General, with the school board letter and then 5 days later your memo to regarding school board issues?
Obviously, the letter, which was public and asked for assistance from the Justice Department, was brought to our attention, and it's a relevant factor in...
Who gave you the letter?
I'm sorry?
How'd you become aware of the letter? Who gave it to you?
I read about the letter in the news. That's how I read about it.
What the White House told you to write the memo?
No one in the White House spoke to me about the memo at all, but I am sure, at least I certainly would believe that the White House communicated its concerns about the letter to the Justice Department, and that is perfectly...
Oh, that was my next question. Did you or anyone at the Justice Department discuss the memo with White House personnel or with anyone at the White House before the memo was sent?
I did not. I don't know whether anyone discussed the memo. I am sure that the communication from the National Association of School Boards was discussed between the White House and the Justice Department, and that's perfectly appropriate, just as...
Who were those individuals? Who at the White House talked with? Who at the Justice Department?
I don't know. I don't know.
Did they talk to you? Did someone call you?
I think I've answered. No one from the White House spoke to me. But the White House is perfectly appropriately concerned about violence, just like they're concerned about violence in the streets, and they make requests of the Justice Department in that respect, just like they're concerned about...
Did you or anyone at the Department of Justice communicate with the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, the National School Boards Association prior to your memo?
I did not. I don't know.
You don't know if anyone else at the Justice Department did?
I don't know.
You know, did you or anyone at the Justice Department communicate with those organizations, AFT, NEA, National School Boards Association, prior to the letter? Did you help the National School Boards Association put together the letter?
Again, not. I have had no such conversations. I would be surprised if that happened, but I don't know.
Will FBI agents be attending local school board meetings?
No, FBI agents will not be attending local school boards meetings, and there's nothing in this memo to suggest that. I want to, again, try to be clear. This memo is about violence and threats of violence.
Let me just point out, the same day you did the memo, the Justice Department sent out a press release, Monday, October 4th, 2021. The press release says, Justice Department addresses violent threats against school officials and teachers. Now, you said earlier to a question from one of my colleagues on the Republican side that parents aren't domestic terrorists, we're not going to treat them that way. But let me just read from the third paragraph. According to the Attorney General's memorandum, the Justice Department will launch a series of additional efforts in the coming days designed to address the rising criminal conduct directed towards school personnel. Those efforts are expected to include a creation of a task force consisting of representatives from the Department's Criminal Division, Civil Rights Division, Executive Office of U.S. Attorneys, the FBI, the Community Relations Service, Office of Justice Programs, and the National Security Division. Now, I find that interesting. You said there's no way you're going to be treating parents as domestic terrorists, but you got the National Security Division in a press release regarding your memo that day.
My memo does not mention the National Security Division. It's addressed to...
I didn't say it did. I said the press release accompanying your memo that day from the Department of Justice, right here it is,
I'm going to be as clear
talks about the National Security Division being part of this effort.
I want to be clear as I can be. This is not about what happens inside school board meetings. It's only about threats of violence and violence aimed at school officials, school employees, and teachers.
First sentence of your memo, very first sentence, you said, in recent months there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, threats of violence.
Yes.
When did you first review the data showing this so-called disturbing uptick?
So I read the letter, and we have been seeing over time threats.
Whoa. I didn't ask you. So you read the letter. That's your source?
So let me be clear. This is not a prosecution or an investigation.
Is there some study, some effort, some investigation someone did that said there's been a disturbing uptick, or you just take the words of the National School Board Association?
Well, the National School Board Association, which represents thousands of school boards and school board members, says that there are these kind of threats. When we read in the newspapers reports of threats of violence, when that is in the context of threats of violence
The
against
source
all-
for this, for the very first line in your memo.
Time of the gentleman has
Irving Spike
expired.
Was the School
The
Boards
time of the gentleman has
Association
now
letter.
expired, Mr. Deutsch.